Now is the point of the offseason where rookie picks are exponentially going up in value. So today we're giving you some players that we would trade your rookie picks for to get some proven talent onto your roster. And today we're starting off at the 101. And so Addison, at the 101, we are talking about guys like a Justin Herbert, a Caleb Williams, Drake May, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Puka Nacua, BTJ, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Drake London. We would give away the 101 for any of those guys. So let's start it off at the quarterback position, because as we know, right now we're kind of projecting Ashton Jeanty to be the 101 in Dynasty rookie drafts. Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams, Drake May, why are you taking those guys over the 101?
Well, it's kind of, we talked about this in the last video where the people that most likely have the 101 probably deservedly got that 101. So their team overall is not that great. So what they're trying to do is, you're trying to rebuild, you're trying to build up your team. What are the best assets to do that with? In Superflex, that is quarterbacks and wide receivers. In one quarterback leagues, that is the wide receiver position. But, at the quarterback position, this isn't a Superflex, kind of style. Herbert, Caleb, Drake May are all young guys that, either have that proven production before a past couple of years with Justin Herbert, or, Caleb Williams and Drake May, 2024 rookies, they have that upside to continue growing and building off of the seasons that they already had last year, especially when you look at Caleb Williams getting Ben Johnson. They just upgraded their offensive line drastically through the free agency and trade process. And he's in a fantastic situation still. Drake May poised to get potentially a wide receiver 1 in the NFL draft, and might even, like, Stephon Diggs just visited there. So maybe they bring in one of those other older veterans as like a wide receiver 2 to help him this year. Plus a new offensive system for him with a new coaching staff under Vrabel and McDaniel. So these guys that, you're just looking at in Superflex. Can you move off of the kind of volatile running back asset and move over to a more secure style, more long-term building asset? These are the guys that you want to do it with at the quarterback position.
Now, I already hear the comments. I already see them literally on the screen that are saying, Caleb, there's no way you can trade the 101 for Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs. Those guys are top 2 Dynasty RBs. Ashton Jeanty's probably top 5, top 3 in a lot of people's boards, but I can't trade that away for Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. Addison, let's talk through why someone might actually want to trade away Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs for Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, I only threw these two people, like the 2 running backs, in here because they're the only 2 running backs that I have above Ashton Jeanty in my personal Dynasty rankings. I wouldn't trade Jeanty for Saquon right now. I would rather just, if you have the 101 and you got to make the pick, just take Ashton Jeanty. But if you are one of those teams that maybe you got the 101 and you traded for it a couple years ago or last year and you just kind of lucked your way into the 101 and you are a competitive team, instead of taking Ashton Jeanty, I'm comfortable adding, a second round pick to Jeanty to move up to get Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs, proven NFL talent. I mean, there is possibility that some people might prefer Ashton Jeanty over Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs. They might say, well, hey, Gibbs is, he lost Ben Johnson. Mate, what's that going to do to his production? Bijan is, has Michael Penix, he was really good last year. He was elite, but he wasn't like overly explosively elite, didn't have those massive games like Jahmyr Gibbs did. Jeanty is Ashton Jeanty. Some people also maybe really just want to draft. They don't have a draft pick. Hey, I just want to go up and I'll pay for Ashton Jeanty. So I'll give you Bijan Robinson for him, get a little bit younger. Those leagues are far and few in between, but I would be willing to add to Ashton Jeanty a little bit to go up and get Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs for that known proven talent in those offenses.
Yeah, I've heard in the Dynasty streets a few different people say, well, I would trade away, Bijan to go get Ashton Jeanty because there's that 2-year age gap, which is always kind of ridiculous when you think about it, or that there's, Ashton Jeanty's going to get first round draft capital. So he's got 5 years of team control. That's super valuable. I'm still taking Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs here. So if I had the 101, give me those 2 guys, but I could understand the argument on why someone may want Ashton Jeanty there. But moving on to the wide receivers, I think this is where it's more interesting in this class, because as much as we saw Tet McMillan at his pro day run a good 40-yard dash time, being able to trade the 101 for a Puka Nacua, a Brian Thomas Jr., an Amon-Ra St. Brown, a Drake London. I love any of these guys. I actually recently, within the last 3 weeks, traded away the 101 for Brian Thomas Jr. So I 100% know that can be done. And that's a move that out of all these guys, I actually want Brian Thomas Jr. the most. But would love to kind of get your thoughts, Addison, on trading away the 101 for one of these guys. And if you did have a preference, which wide receiver would you target first?
I mean, just speaking to why you would want to trade 101 for any of these wide receivers. It's the same thing as the quarterbacks. If you have that 101 pick, most likely you are a rebuilding team, not doing well, building for the future. Move that Ashton Jeanty over to a wide receiver so that you can continue building for the long haul with very stable assets. And the three wide receivers in terms of Puka, BTJ, Amon-Ra, if you go plug into KTC right now, it goes those three wide receivers, then Patrick Mahomes, then Ashton Jeanty. So, and like you said, you were able to trade the 101 for BTJ. So these players are right there in terms of community values for Ashton Jeanty. And I personally would probably still lean towards Amon-Ra. Like I just have a soft spot for Amon-Ra. I love Puka too, especially he might be the one that feels the most acquirable, depending on if somebody really doesn't like Devontae Adams coming over to the Rams. And he's always just been a guy, even for the past couple of years, that, it's that draft capital. He kind of came up out of nowhere, wasn't the huge prospect name. So because of where he came from, still could be a little bit undervalued in your league. So I like Puka a lot. I love BTJ. If you can get any of these guys, like if you have the 101, I'd just shoot a trade offer for all four of these guys. Drake London is the one name that is actually a few spots below Ashton Jeanty, but I would still take him as a very young asset with an up-and-coming young quarterback in year 2 of the offensive system that they have with Zach Robinson. London, I think, is also a superb wide receiver to go get for Ashton Jeanty.
Now, moving on to the next bucket, we got the 102 to the 104, and the players that we would trade these picks for, we got Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield at the quarterback position. At the wide receiver position, we have Ladd McConkey, Marvin Harrison Jr., JSN, and then at the tight end position, we have Trey McBride. So let's start it off with the conversation around Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. We're talking about two guys right now that have kind of been bouncing around QB 12 to QB 14 on Keep Trade Cut. In this range, we're probably assuming a guy like a Cam Ward will probably go in the rookie draft. So kind of, Addison, want to hear your thoughts on Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, as there's not a lot of love right now towards Kyler Murray in the community, but we've seen the high end potential, the Konami code quarterback upside over the past few seasons. Last year was QB 12 on both a seasonal basis and a points per game basis. Kind of want your opinion on Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield as quarterbacks going forward and trading one of these early round picks for.
More of this conversation is just centered around the fact that there's still a lot of uncertainty with Cam Ward himself. I personally really like Cam Ward in my QB marker system that I just debuted on this channel a few days ago. He's grading out as one of the really, really good quarterbacks over the past like 5 or 6 years. Not as good as, a bunch of other quarterbacks, but like he's in that range. So he deserves to be here as the QB1 in the class. He deserves to be a top 3 or 4 pick in Superflex. It's just, do you want to move off of the unknown of that and move over to a Kyler Murray who has been phenomenal for most of his career with Arizona and should still be phenomenal? I mean, last year it was so up and down. It's an absolute roller coaster. I think that's an offensive problem. But if he and Marvin Harrison Jr. can get onto the same sort of page like him and Trey McBride are on, that offense could be so massive. And with Kyler's rushing upside, I feel like I'm still buying into Kyler because it should work and it should be there over the what if of Cam Ward. Same with Baker Mayfield. I mean, he has been doing it for the past couple of years. He did lose Liam Cohen, but I mean, Baker's never had back-to-back seasons with the same offensive coordinator, but everything else around him is the same. Evans is there. They re-signed Chris Godwin. Jalen McMillan's still there. Bucky Irving, Rashad White, even as the RB2, Kate Otten. It's like offensively, it's the same offense that he's had for the past 2 years, and he's been a quality QB1. So I'd trade away the unknown of Cam Ward for either of these quarterbacks right now.
I know when we're talking specifically through these wide receivers, in my last buy video, I did talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray, both as great buys if you're trying to rebuild. But Ladd McConkey, Marvin Harrison Jr., JSN for the 102 to the 104, any of these guys in this year's class, I don't care what your marker system says, Addison, and I think your marker system will probably agree with me, are better prospects than any of the guys, maybe Tet McMillan, depending on how you actually evaluate that pro day 40-yard dash time, might be above them. But I'm taking any of these guys over Tet McMillan. So if I can trade a pick where I need a wide receiver to go get a guy like a Ladd McConkey, we saw really great success in year 1. We'll have to see what the Chargers do, but they really didn't address the wide receiver position through free agency. Marvin Harrison Jr., if he was in this class, still probably goes as the 101, goes over Ashton Jeanty, even kind of with what we know what happened in year 1. And then, of course, JSN, Adding Cooper Kupp, there's a little bit of concern that, they both play the slot, but I don't think that necessarily affects JSN. You got DK Metcalf, wide receiver 1 out of there, and I think JSN fully steps into that wide receiver 1 role heading into 2025. So I like all these wide receivers. Kind of wanted your opinion on where do you have Tet? So if someone's asking, where do you have Tet relative to these guys in your marker system, where would that be?
Tet, I know, would be 100% behind Marvin Harrison Jr., and I think he's currently lining up to be very similar to JSN. And he would actually grade out ahead of Ladd McConkey, but that's just because McConkey's seasonal stats, when you factor in the injuries that he had playing with Brock Bowers, he didn't grade out super well last year, and that's why I was off of him. But then incorporating Pro Football Focus markers that I fixed it this year, quote unquote fixed it. I created the Ladd McConkey list that McConkey shines brightly on with, him and Puka and T. Higgins and some other like really good names over the past few years. I think that McConkey, even though he didn't come out of college as good of a prospect, I don't think that matters. When you come in as you put up 1,000 yards as a rookie, look as great as he did, it's tied to Justin Herbert. My prospect system, be damned, none of that matters after what he's already done. So I would take all three of these guys pretty decently over Tet McMillan. And I think it's crazy. I actually saw somebody on Twitter yesterday, or X yesterday, say that you should be actively trading away the 103 or trading away Ladd McConkey for the 1.03 because Tet McMillan is a better prospect. I don't necessarily disagree that Tet McMillan may or may not be a better prospect than Ladd McConkey, but I think from a dynasty landscape, to just ignore what McConkey did last year and the offense that he's in, I think it's foolish to trade away McConkey for a re-roll on a rookie that may or may not be as good as him. And I'd rather be doing that in the opposite direction. MHJ is very easy. Go buy JSN for sure. I'm not worried about Cooper Kupp at all. Buy any of these wide receivers instead of Tet McMillan.
And then the last and final player in this 102 to 104 range, we got Trey McBride. And so the tight end landscape, and I want to talk to you about this, Addison. Last year, we were all hyped about a guy like a Sam Laporta coming off that amazing rookie season. And then we kind of see him start to fall off in year two. We saw Trey McBride, of course, take huge steps. I wanted to hear your thoughts trading this pick, especially like if it's a tight end premium league, of course, we're going to highly recommend it. But let's assume that it's not. And you just need, that's maybe is the last piece that you need to go try to achieve that championship. 104, do we really think the 104 is going to get us Trey McBride?
No, I don't even think the 102 is going to get you Trey McBride. But I threw him in here as this is where I would, if you have these picks, I would begin to look at how can you acquire Trey McBride with these picks. You might have to add another second. You might have to throw in your starting tight end, whoever that may be, or both. But I think, this is where like the nuance of this video kind of comes from, is like, you're not going to be able to trade all of these picks one for some of these guys. You're going to have to start working the deal, but this is where the foundation and the groundwork starts to be laid in this specific range. I would even be tempted, if you're in that hard of a rebuild, to potentially trade away Ashton Jeanty for Trey McBride, especially if it's a tight end premium league or a 1.75, even 2 PPR tight end premium league. I'd be potentially willing to do that with the 1.01, but I think 102, 103, 104 is a good starting point to try to see if you can get to Trey McBride and just cross that position off. You're done. You can there's Amari and Hamptons in every single draft. There's Tet McMillans in every single draft. There's Cam Wards in basically every draft except for 2022, that you can just go and just be done with your tight end position. Don't even got to think about it. That is so much more valuable to the long-term health of your dynasty roster than it is to maybe, just continue to take that pick and trying to Frankenstein your tight end position every year.
Now, moving on to the 105 to the 109 range, we have Michael Penix, Dak Prescott, Kyren Williams, Kenneth Walker, DJ Moore, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy. And let's start it off with the quarterback conversation, Addison, where we got Michael Penix and Dak Prescott. Both of these guys have risen in their KTC value over the last 30 days. And I think a lot of people, specifically with Michael Penix, are going to say that it was only a 3-game sample size versus being able to also get a quarterback like a Dak Prescott who has proven it, just a little bit older. We're still assuming he's got about 3 to 4 years left of elite level production. I just wanted to get your opinions on Michael Penix Jr. and Dak Prescott in the dynasty landscape, and then, of course, being able to trade that for the 105 to the 109.
I mean, I've always been on board with Dak Prescott for a couple years now. I think he's probably he was, especially right after the season ended, like the most undervalued player in all of dynasty fantasy football. I saw people even questioning if they should even spend a first on Dak Prescott, which I think is absolutely bonkers. I would be willing to trade, any of these kind of, tier 2 running backs like Quinshon Judkins or, Caleb Johnson, or the tight ends in this, or Luther Burden. I would trade any of those guys so easily away for Dak Prescott, who could be your QB2, but has QB1 massive upside with CeeDee Lamb, and if they add another wide receiver, maybe they even add Luther Burden. Michael Penix, I think, is definitely an ascending quarterback. You look at the system that he's in with year 2 of Zach Robinson. He's got Drake London. He's got Bijan Robinson. Darnell Mooney's a really good wide receiver too. Kyle Pitts is there, I guess. But, I would easily trade away any pick in this range for either one of these two quarterbacks, because you're not going to get a better quarterback in this year's class in that range. I'm a big fan of Jackson Dart. I don't love Shedeur Sanders. I would take both these quarterbacks over both of those rookies.
So let's say you're at the 105, Addison, and you're a quarterback needy team, and Cam Ward somehow has slipped to the 105 due to landing spot, and you're just sitting there, but someone offers you Michael Penix Jr. Are you taking Cam Ward at the 105, or are you taking Michael Penix Jr. at the 105?
Boy, that is a phenomenal question. I would probably still take Michael Penix just for the situation that I know that he's in. And we did, it was a 3-game sample, but like we did see a little bit of it, last year at the end of the season. Cam Ward, I mean, for him to have fallen to the 105, I would imagine that means that he didn't land with the New York Giants, because I think him landing to the Giants and throwing him Malik Neighbors, I think is just like chef's kiss. But people really would have to hate him, in Tennessee or even in Cleveland, I feel like is a good situation. But I feel like I would still take Michael Penix over Cam Ward.
I'm right there with you. I think if you are arguing, I would trade even a higher level pick. Like, you don't have to, but I would trade the 102, the 103 for Michael Penix Jr., especially like if I needed a quarterback, which we're saying you can probably get a guy like a Baker or a Kyler based on what KTC is saying. But Michael Penix Jr., I think people also are a little bit worried about his mobility. Like, we act like he's a statue back there. Like, everyone compares him. They're like, oh, he's Tua because he's left-handed and throws a pretty ball. But I mean, if you looked at the way his last 3 games went and a lot of the completions, I would argue that Michael Penix Jr. has maybe one of the top 2 arms in last year's class. Like, I think you probably would say him and Caleb. And he's not a statue. We just didn't get to see him run as much as I think a lot of people were hoping to see. Because he's not slow, that's for sure. 4.840. So I definitely want to continue to see Michael Penix Jr. develop in this year too. But yeah, 100%. I'm taking Michael Penix Jr. over the 105. Now let's move to some of the other positions. So let's talk the running backs. We got Kyren Williams and Kenneth Walker. And so in this range, we're assuming that a lot of rookie running backs are probably going to be in this range, whether it's a TreVeyon Henderson, a Caleb Johnson. We'll have to see kind of where other draft capital goes, a guy like a Quinshon Judkins. So are you taking those guys, or are you going to flip those for sometimes a known commodity like a Kyren Williams or Kenneth Walker? We got Kenneth Walker in a more depleted Seattle Seahawks offense. We got Kyren Williams, who I think a lot of people are undervaluing right now because we're just assuming that the Rams might take another running back, a younger running back in this NFL draft. What are your thoughts when it comes to kind of buying some of these younger veteran running backs?
Yeah, I would take both of these running backs over running backs in this kind of range. I would take Amari Hampton over these guys. So that's why I wouldn't flip, a top 4 pick that could be Amari Hampton into these guys. But when you get down into TreVeyon and Judkins and Caleb Johnson, I would take these running backs over them. Like Kyren Williams is the RB10 on Keep Trade Cut. I have no freaking clue why that is the case. He has been so undervalued for 2 years now because we just keep wishing him to die. And he's 24 and a half years old. He's been a workhorse running back for 2 years in a row. What more do you want out of Kyren Williams? It's so confusing to me why he's still valued so low and why he's valued, in this kind of range. Like, I'm not cherry picking this. He's literally behind Hampton, Tet McMillan, Cam Ward, and he's not that far above of TreVeyon Henderson. So like, he's in this range that you can go get Kyren for this range. I would do that instantly in a heartbeat, especially if you are one of those teams that, in that mid first, but you are a first round bounce in the playoffs. Like, if you can just go add Kyren Williams as an RB1 to your roster, that could be a move that literally takes you from, 5th or 6th place in 2024 to 1st place in 2025 if he stays healthy. Walker, I think, is just more of a case of, I'm still hoping. It's like we're entering year 4. I'm still hoping that we can get a Kenneth Walker season because we've seen it every single year. He just can't stay healthy. But I think with the depleted, Seahawks room, new quarterback coming in, new offensive system coming in with Clint Kubiak, that, he's talking up Kenneth Walker. He can get all the receptions. He should get a lot of receiving work. I think people are worried about Zach Charbonnet. I'm not really worried about Zach Charbonnet for Kenneth Walker. I'm still willing to do that. But really, these are the only two. I mean, I would pay for this range for Jonathan Taylor, but I don't think you can do that. But like, I would just take the rookies over James Cook, over some of the other rookies that are running backs that we're going to be talking about in the next range. But if you can do this with Kyren or Kenneth, I understand if people are a little more hesitant. But Kyren, you should easily be trading away these picks for Kyren Williams.
Easily. And I think we've talked about it on the channel before, but the pendulum swift of it was a few years, last 2 years, it's been everyone hates running backs. You hate running backs. But then last year, if you didn't have running backs, you didn't win. And so now the pendulum is swinging back to the middle. And I think if you have one of these picks, and especially if you're sitting here in the 105 to 109 range, you were within striking range of making it into your playoffs in your fantasy league, or you made the playoffs and you were one of the first teams out. So being able to add one of these running backs that could have top 5, top 7 production, 100% be trading the 105 to 109 for that. When we're talking through wide receivers, we got DJ Moore, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy. My favorite wide receiver of this list is 100% Rashee Rice, but I wanted to kind of hear who is your favorite that you put here for the wide receiver position for the 105 to the 109.
I love Rashee Rice as well. My favorite might be DJ Moore, as kind of I'm kind of putting the Amon-Ra role onto him for the Ben Johnson offense. Not that I don't think that there is an Amon-Ra role necessarily. I think that Amon-Ra is just that good, and Ben Johnson knows how to tailor his offense to the weapons that he has. But DJ Moore has he's shown it, 2 years ago with Justin Fields. He showed it over the second half of the year, post Shane Waldron firing, when that offense just finally was able to do something, because Shane Waldron is a terrible offensive coordinator. If you look at the 17-game pace of what DJ Moore was doing over the second half of the year, it aligns very closely with what he did in 2023 with Justin Fields. But, you give Caleb Williams more time to throw, a better offensive system, a system that allows DJ Moore to actually run the routes and be utilized in a way that fits DJ Moore's skill set. I mean, we saw what happened with JSN in a full year without Shane Waldron. We saw over the second half of the year last year without Shane Waldron for DJ Moore. So I would be buying into DJ Moore for this range, especially for those teams that got booted in round 1. I think that if you can add a wide receiver like DJ Moore, I think that you need to be doing that in that kind of a range. I still do love Rashee Rice, and I think Xavier Worthy is very, very good to trade for in this range. But I would put my stamp on DJ Moore.
I'm putting my stamp on Rashee Rice, and I think if Rashee Rice played a full season, which we didn't get to see, we'd be talking about Rashee Rice as a top 5, if not top 4, dynasty wide receiver heading into this year. Now, part of the reason he's not is because homie can't drive and he got injured. And so we are getting the injury/dummy discount on Rashee Rice right now. And if I was anybody that is watching this video, I don't care if you're a contender. I don't care if you're a rebuilder. If you can trade anything in this range to go get Rashee Rice, I'm 100% doing it. And I'm taking it to the bank because this dude is tied to Patrick Mahomes for the foreseeable future. We got Travis Kelce, who seems to be on his last legs. As much as we loved what Xavier Worthy was able to accomplish, we saw Xavier Worthy do that without Rashee Rice. And so as somebody that is looking and saying, hey, he put up 16.2 fantasy points per game in the 4 games that he played with 29 targets, sign me the heck up for Rashee Rice. Now, are we going to have to wait for him for 6 games? Yes. It's probably going to be a 6-game suspension, maybe a 4-game suspension. We'll have to see. It's kind of weird that we haven't heard what that's going to look like. But let's be fair. He's coming off of major knee surgery. So he probably wasn't playing the first 4 weeks, or he was going to be slowly ramping up. So we'll just give him some extra time to recover. And then when he comes back and absolutely demolishes it for you from week 7 onward, you're going to be so happy that you bought into Rashee Rice this offseason. Now, for the 110 to the 112, we would trade this pick for pretty much any of the quarterbacks that we talked about above, but you'd have to add something else on to get up to it, kind of as in the range of a quarterback dead zone in value. But when we start to look at running backs, guys like a Chuba Hubbard, a Josh Jacobs, a Chase Brown, wide receivers, we're kind of in that same mindset of we don't like any of the current wide receivers trading 1 for 1. So we highly recommend adding a second or adding another piece alongside that late first to get up to a guy like a Rashee Rice, to get up to a Ladd McConkey, Marvin Harrison Jr., or JSN, depending on what you can add. But if you did need some tight end help, a guy like a George Kittle, who continues to be undervalued because of his age, but his situation has gotten better with no Deebo Samuel for the San Francisco 49ers. But Addison, when you're talking about what you should be doing with the 110 to 112, if you're planning on trading it for a player, kind of what's your thought process with these guys and your strategy?
Yeah, this was the hardest range to kind of find names to trade the pick away for a veteran, especially if we're using KTC as kind of like our baseline for community value, because I don't know what it, but KTC apparently really hates these rookies that are coming in because they are in some massive veteran dead zones. I mean, I like the running backs here. I like that, Chuba is down in here. I think he's a guy that, some people have been saying, oh, I'm a little worried about the Rico Dowdle signing. That's more indicative of what they had behind Chuba with Jonathan Brooks being hurt again, and they cut Miles Sanders. It's the exact same thing that, Corum being drafted was indicative of them having nothing behind Kyren Williams. I don't think Rico Dowdle is going to take Chuba Hubbard's job at any point during this year. He is the RB1 and was tremendous in that role last year. So being able to trade a late first as a team that won or was just close enough to winning last year, you should be willing to do that for a potential top 12 running back in fantasy football for 2025. Josh Jacobs is the same way. We do have Chase Brown in here. I'd be a little hesitant to make that move now, but if we found out post-draft that Chase Brown survived, I feel like they have to add somebody. But if he survives, without getting any of the top 5 names, and, maybe it's RJ Harvey coming to the Bengals or somebody like that, like I would be much more in on Chase Brown, especially in this range post-draft, knowing that he survived the draft. And I might even be willing to pay a little bit more. He might bump up into the mid-first range instead of the late first. But I mean, looking at everything else, like I'm not paying a late first for Chris Olave or Jalen Waddle or DK Metcalf, or I wouldn't pay a late first right now for Derrick Henry. Not to say that he's going to lose his job to a rookie, but I'm just not paying a late first for a 31-year-old running back. And Derrick Henry himself is an interesting case because he's probably on another competing team, and they don't want to trade you Derrick Henry because they're trading away him to their competition. So that trade probably is just hard to get done right now anyway. I'm not trading away a late first for Sam Darnold or Justin Fields or any of these other quarterbacks. Like, if you have this pick, either keep it and draft some fallen rookies that have come down the board, like the tight ends, or maybe it's Luther Burden, or maybe it's, Travis Hunter for the upside of him, or add something to it and move up for those quarterbacks and wide receivers that we talked about in the mid first or even the early first range, instead of trading somebody out, 1 for 1 from this pick range.
I know we're talking about, of course, trading these picks for players, but I do think in this specific range, I'm probably someone that is also kind of along the lines of what you said of like, just hold, because these picks, specifically late first, always go up more in value after we know landing spots, because what happens once we know landing spots is some of these lesser prospects that we're maybe not so excited about, that are probably fringe late first, early seconds, get pushed up the board. Some of the topper prospects get a bad landing spot. All of a sudden, a guy like an Emeka Egbuka lands somewhere that we hate. All of a sudden, we're able to get him at the 110 instead of maybe the projected 107. And so I would just, if you have that first, just hold on to it, because you can also make these trades when you're on the clock as we approach the draft. But then you kind of get a better picture too of that overall value, because I do think the first will go up in value, and you maybe could snag a guy like an Xavier Worthy or a Rashee Rice, depending on that kind of pick value, even at the 110, the 111, depending on how the draft kind of plays out. So just highly recommend that if you are watching this, you got the late first, just hold on to it, because after the dust settles after the NFL draft, you're probably going to get a better player just by waiting a few more weeks. If you like Dynasty Fantasy Football, please hit that like and subscribe button, as we are on the way to 20,000 subscribers. If you want to tune into another video, we got one video about trade targets for rebuilders, and we also have Addison's quarterback marker system video. So click on one of these, and we'll catch you on the next one.